For the first time in recorded history, something from beyond our solar system may be interfering with the satellites orbiting Earth right now, at this very moment, and what I'm about to share with you will fundamentally change how you understand our place in the cosmos. I'm not here to scare you, I'm here to wake you up. Because what's happening in the space above your head, right now as you listen to these words, is something I've spent my entire career preparing for, and yet when the data started coming in last week, even I felt that familiar electric chill run down my spine, the same sensation I felt as a child when I first understood that the universe doesn't play by rules we can predict. My name is Michio Kaku, and I've dedicated my life to understanding the physics of the impossible, to pushing the boundaries of what we know about reality itself. I've studied black holes, parallel universes, the nature of time and consciousness. But nothing, and I mean nothing, has gripped me quite like what's unfolding right now with ATLAS. Let me be absolutely clear with you. This isn't normal for a comet. Something about 3E. Atlas is off the charts, and we need answers fast. You see, 3 days ago, I received a call from a colleague at NASA. Her voice had that particular quality, that tension I've learned to recognize over decades of scientific collaboration. It's the sound of someone who's seen data that doesn't make sense, data that violates expectations, data that demands we rethink everything. She said 5 words that made me cancel every meeting on my calendar. The satellites are acting strange. Now, before we go any further, I need you to understand something fundamental about how fragile our modern world actually is. Right now, above your head, approximately 26,000 satellites are circling our planet. They're not just up there for science or exploration. They are the invisible nervous system of human civilization. Every GPS direction you follow, every weather forecast you check, every phone call you make, every financial transaction that moves through the digital ether, every emergency response system, every military defense network, it all depends on these satellites functioning perfectly, predictably, without interference. We've built our entire global infrastructure on the assumption that space around Earth is a stable, predictable environment. We've treated near-Earth orbit like it's an extension of our terrestrial domain, subject to our control, our understanding, our mastery. And then 3E, ATLAS, showed up. This object, this visitor from interstellar space, isn't playing by the rules. And over the past 72 hours, we've documented something that should be impossible. During 3E, Atlas's visibility window, when it's positioned in certain alignments with Earth, satellite operators around the world have reported identical phenomena, signal distortion that shouldn't exist, unexpected telemetry glitches that have no terrestrial explanation, and most disturbing of all, sudden data blackouts, brief moments where satellites simply go silent, as if something is reaching up from the cosmic depths and touching them. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually means on the ground. Imagine you're a satellite engineer at a ground station in Sweden. It's 3 in the morning. You're monitoring a constellation of communication satellites, routine work you've done 1,000 times. Everything is nominal, perfectly normal. And then, without warning, one satellite signal begins to degrade. Not slowly, not in a pattern consistent with solar activity or known interference sources, but instantly, as if something just passed between you and that satellite. The telemetry shows the satellite is still there, still functioning, but the data coming back is corrupted, scrambled. And here's what made my colleague's blood run cold. When she checked the timing of these anomalies across multiple satellites from different operators, different countries, different orbital paths, she found they all corresponded precisely with 3 Atlas's position in the sky. That's not coincidence. That's correlation. And in science, unexplained correlation is the doorway to revolutionary discovery or to profound danger, or sometimes both at once. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Michio, comets have passed near Earth before. We've studied them. We understand them. Why is this one different? And that question, that beautiful, skeptical question, is exactly what we need to answer together. Because 3, Atlas isn't just any comet, it's an interstellar object, meaning it originated outside our solar system, somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars. Only the second confirmed interstellar visitor we've ever detected. The first was Oumuamua, that bizarre cigar-shaped object that tumbled through our solar system in 2017 and left us with more questions than answers. But Psi, Atlas is different in a crucial way. It has a coma, a massive cloud of gas and dust surrounding its nucleus, stretching hundreds of thousands of kilometers into space. Think about that scale for a moment. Hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The distance from Earth to the Moon is about 384,000 kilometers. The coma of 3, Atlas, is comparable to that distance. It's not a small object leaving a little trail. It's a cosmic giant dragging an enormous envelope of material through the solar system, and that envelope is now close enough to Earth's orbital space that we're potentially flying through its outer edges. When I first saw the size estimates, I had to sit down, because I immediately understood the implications. A coma that large isn't just made of dust and ice. It's a complex plasma environment filled with ionized particles, electromagnetic fields, and exotic chemistry we're only beginning to understand. And if Earth's satellites, which orbit at altitudes ranging from a few hundred kilometers to 36,000 kilometers, are passing through the outer regions of that coma or being affected by its electromagnetic properties, then we're not just observing an astronomical phenomenon anymore. We're experiencing direct contact with interstellar material right here, right now, in the space we thought we controlled. This is where my training as a theoretical physicist kicks into overdrive, because the question isn't just, what is 3 ATLAS doing to our satellites? The question is, what is 3 ATLAS telling us about physics we don't yet understand? Let me take you deeper into what we're actually observing, because the details matter, and they're absolutely fascinating in the most unsettling way possible. The signal distortions aren't random noise. They have structure, patterns. When engineers analyze the corrupted data, they're finding anomalies that suggest magnetic field interference far stronger than anything a normal comet should produce. Now, comets to have magnetic properties. We know this. As solar wind interacts with a comet's coma, it can create induced magnetic fields. But the strength and behavior of what we're potentially seeing with Atlas doesn't match our models. It's as if this object is carrying with it a magnetic personality that's fundamentally different from anything that evolved in our solar system. Think about what that means. For 4.5 billion years, everything in our solar system has been shaped by the same initial conditions, the same primordial cloud of gas and dust that collapsed to form the sun and planets. Every asteroid, every comet, every speck of dust we've ever studied was born from that same material, subject to the same physical processes. But 3 ATLAS wasn't born here. It was born somewhere else, in a different stellar environment, around a different star, subject to different conditions we can barely imagine. It's bringing with it the fingerprints of alien astrophysics. Not alien in the sense of little green beings, but alien in the sense of fundamentally foreign physical conditions. And now those conditions are intersecting with our technology, with our satellites, with the infrastructure that keeps 7 billion people connected and safe. The telemetry glitches are equally mysterious. Satellites have internal clocks that keep precise time, essential for GPS and communications. Some of the anomalies involve microsecond-level timing errors, as if time itself is being slightly distorted in the presence of ATLAS. Now, before you think I've gone off the deep end, let me be clear. I'm not suggesting 3 Atlas is bending space-time like a black hole. But charged particle environments can affect the propagation of electromagnetic signals. And if those effects are strong enough and structured in unexpected ways, they can create apparent timing anomalies in satellite systems. What disturbs me most, though, are the data blackouts. Complete loss of signal, even if just for seconds, is something satellite engineers design extensively to prevent. Satellites have redundant communication systems, multiple frequency bands, error correction protocols. For a satellite to go completely silent requires something overwhelming its ability to communicate through any channel. And when multiple satellites from different operators using different technologies experience simultaneous blackouts correlated with Tri-Atlas's position, we're looking at an effect that transcends any single technological vulnerability. It's as if space itself, in the vicinity of this object, becomes temporarily opaque to our signals. As if Atlas is wrapped in a cloak of physics we don't fully understand, and when our satellites pass through certain angles or distances relative to it, they briefly enter that realm of the unknown. Now, I want to be responsible here. I want to be clear about what we know and what we don't know, because in science, especially in a moment like this, precision matters. We are still in the early stages of understanding what's happening. The correlations I'm describing are preliminary. Scientists around the world are working 24/7 to gather more data, to rule out alternative explanations, to build models that can account for what we're seeing. It's entirely possible that in the coming weeks we'll find mundane explanations, unusual solar activity we didn't initially account for, or cascading technical failures that just happened to coincide with Tri-Atlas's passage, or errors in our detection and correlation methods. But I've been doing this long enough to trust my instincts, and my instincts are screaming that something genuinely new is happening here. The data has that quality, that fingerprint of the unprecedented. And when I spoke to colleagues across multiple disciplines, astronomers, plasma physicists, satellite engineers, I heard the same note of cautious alarm in every voice. Nobody wants to cry wolf. Nobody wants to be the scientist who overstated a phenomenon. But nobody can explain what we're seeing using conventional frameworks either. So where does that leave us? It leaves us in that beautiful, terrifying space that exists at the frontier of human knowledge, where the map ends and the unknown begins. And this is where I need to shift from telling you what's happening to exploring with you why it matters. Not just for satellite operators and scientists, but for you, for your understanding of reality, for how you see your place in this vast cosmos. Because here's what I've learned in 50 years of studying the universe. Every time we encounter something that doesn't fit our models, every time nature surprises us, every time we're forced to say, wait, that shouldn't be possible, we're standing at the threshold of transformation. Not just scientific transformation, but human transformation. These moments change us if we're willing to let them. When Galileo first pointed his telescope at Jupiter and saw moons orbiting another world, he didn't just discover new objects. He shattered the assumption that Earth was the center of everything. When Einstein realized that time itself could bend and stretch, he didn't just solve equations. He revealed that reality is far stranger and more beautiful than anyone had imagined. When we first saw the Earth from space, that pale blue dot suspended in the cosmic void, we didn't just see our planet. We saw our fragility, our unity, our profound isolation and connection all at once. Atlas is offering us one of those moments right now. And whether the satellite interference turns out to be a major discovery or a minor anomaly, the deeper truth remains. We are not separate from the cosmos. We are part of it, woven into it, and it is constantly reaching out to touch us in ways we're only beginning to perceive. I want you to imagine something with me. Close your eyes for a moment if you're in a safe place to do so. Picture yourself standing in an open field at night looking up at the stars. Now imagine that every photon of starlight hitting your eyes has traveled for years, decades, centuries, even millions of years to reach you. You're not just seeing the stars, you're touching the past, connecting with events that happened before you were born, before human civilization existed, before Earth itself formed. The universe is constantly sending us messages, encoded in light, in particles, in gravitational waves, in the strange behavior of interstellar visitors like 3E, Atlas. And here's the profound part. For most of human history, we couldn't read those messages. We could look up and wonder, but we couldn't understand. Now, for the first time in 4 billion years of life on this planet, there are beings, us, who can decode the cosmic signals, who can translate the language of the universe into human knowledge. We've built satellites that extend our senses into space. We've developed physics that lets us predict and explain celestial mechanics. We've created a global network of scientists who can share observations in real time and collectively make sense of the unprecedented. We are the universe becoming aware of itself. And when something like 3I, ATLAS interferes with our satellites, it's not just a technical problem, it's a conversation, a cosmic dialogue between human ingenuity and the forces that have shaped existence since time began. You see, every satellite we've ever launched, every GPS signal guiding you to work, every weather prediction saving lives from hurricanes, every communication link connecting lovers across oceans, they all exist in this delicate ballet with the cosmos. And we've been dancing without fully understanding our partner. 3. Atlas has taught us something profound. The universe doesn't care about our treaties, our territorial claims, or our carefully planned orbital architectures. It moves according to laws that preceded us by 13 billion years and will continue long after our last satellite falls silent. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. The encounter with 3I, Atlas has sparked what I call the awakening of adaptive space infrastructure. Within months of the first warnings, engineers at ESA and NASA began designing what they're calling dynamic orbit systems, satellites that can predict and autonomously adjust to gravitational anomalies in real time. We're talking about spacecraft with AI-driven propulsion systems that learn, that anticipate, that evolve their responses to cosmic threats we haven't even discovered yet. Think about that for a moment. We're creating technology that doesn't just react to the universe, it converses with it. These satellites will carry sensors detecting gravitational waves, monitoring the solar wind, tracking near-Earth objects with unprecedented precision. They'll share data instantaneously across entire constellations, creating a distributed intelligence in orbit around our planet. This is biomimicry on a cosmic scale. Just as a flock of birds moves as one organism, adjusting to wind currents and obstacles without central command, our future satellite networks will flow and adapt through space like a living membrane, protecting our civilization while respecting the cosmic environment they inhabit. And the implications stretch far beyond just saving our GPS. We're developing the foundational technology for humanity's expansion into the solar system. Think about it. Right now, we're a one-planet species. Every human who has ever lived, every civilization that has risen and fallen, every dream and discovery, all confined to this fragile blue marble suspended in the void. But that's about to change. And the swarm intelligence we're developing to manage our satellites isn't just about protecting Earth's orbit. It's the prototype for something far grander. When we establish permanent bases on the Moon, when we send the first colonists to Mars, when we mine asteroids and build habitats in the depths of space, we'll need autonomous systems that can make decisions across millions of miles where the speed of light itself becomes a limitation. You can't control a mining operation on Ceres from Earth when your commands take 20 minutes to arrive. You need intelligence on site, intelligence that can coordinate, adapt, and solve problems in real time. The satellite swarms we're building today are the ancestors of those systems. Each advancement in collision avoidance, each breakthrough in autonomous coordination, each lesson learned from managing thousands of satellites dancing in low Earth orbit, all of it feeds into the knowledge base we'll need to become a true spacefaring civilization. I often think about the pioneers who crossed oceans in wooden ships, navigating by stars they barely understood, driven by an irrepressible human urge to explore. They couldn't have imagined GPS, satellite communications, or the technology that makes our modern world possible. But their courage opened doors. They proved that humanity doesn't accept boundaries. We stand at a similar threshold now. The Kessler syndrome isn't just a problem to solve, it's an initiation, a test of whether we have the wisdom to match our ambition. Can we develop the technology to not just use space, but to live in harmony with it? Can we build systems intelligent enough to protect themselves while preserving access for future generations? I believe we can, because throughout history, when humanity has faced existential challenges, we've responded not with retreat, but with innovation. We've always chosen to reach higher, to build smarter, to dream bigger. Think about the engineers who looked at the overwhelming problem of air pollution in our cities and said, what if the solution isn't just filtering the air, but reimagining how we move? Today, electric vehicles are no longer science fiction. They're parked in driveways across the world. Solar panels that once cost a fortune now blanket rooftops from California to Kenya. We didn't wait for the perfect technology. We started with what we had and improved it year by year, breakthrough by breakthrough. And here's what gives me hope. The same exponential growth that threatens us can also save us. The technology curve doesn't just apply to surveillance and AI. It applies to renewable energy, to carbon capture, to distributed systems that put power back in the hands of individuals. Every 18 months, solar efficiency improves. Battery technology leaps forward. The tools of liberation become cheaper and more accessible. I've walked through villages in rural India where a single solar panel has transformed entire communities. Children can study after dark. Medical clinics can refrigerate vaccines. Small businesses can operate computers. This isn't just about energy, it's about human potential unleashed. And it happened not because a government mandated it from above, but because the technology became affordable enough for ordinary people to adopt. But let me be clear about something crucial. Technology alone will never be enough. We also need something that no algorithm can provide, no machine can generate. We need wisdom. We need the courage to ask not just can we build this, but should we build this? We need the moral imagination to understand that every invention carries consequences that ripple across generations. The scientists who built the atomic bomb learned this lesson in the most terrible way possible. Many of them spent the rest of their lives advocating for nuclear disarmament, haunted by what their genius had unleashed. Oppenheimer's famous words echo through time, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." They possessed the knowledge but gained the wisdom too late. We don't have to repeat that mistake. We can build wisdom into our systems from the beginning. Think about it this way. When we train an AI system today, we're essentially creating a mind with the collective knowledge of humanity, but without having lived a single day. It knows everything about pain but has never suffered. It understands loss intellectually but has never grieved. This is the paradox we must solve. I've been working with teams that are trying to address this fundamental challenge. They're building what I call empathy architectures, systems that don't just process emotional data but understand its weight, its context, its human cost. These aren't simple algorithms. They're frameworks that force AI to consider multiple perspectives simultaneously, to recognize that every decision creates ripples through countless lives. Imagine an AI system making healthcare decisions. Without wisdom, it might optimize purely for statistical outcomes. It could recommend denying treatment to a patient because the numbers suggest low survival probability. But a wise system would also factor in that patient's role as a parent, as a community member, as someone whose life has immeasurable value beyond statistics. It would understand that hope itself can be therapeutic, that human dignity matters, that families need time to say goodbye. This isn't about making AI emotional in a human sense. It's about building systems that recognize the full dimensionality of human experience. And here's what fascinates me. We're discovering that wisdom might actually be mathematically modelable. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but enough to create meaningful guardrails. I've seen research where AI systems are trained on ethical dilemmas throughout history, learning not just the decisions that were made, but understanding why certain choices led to flourishing while others led to catastrophe. They study the Nuremberg trials to understand complicity. They analyze the civil rights movement to comprehend the arc of justice. They examine environmental disasters to grasp the concept of irreversible harm. This curriculum I'm describing isn't theoretical. It exists in fragments across enlightened school districts. In Finland, students engage in phenomenon-based learning that connects multiple subjects through real-world challenges. In New Zealand, schools integrate indigenous perspectives on collective responsibility and intergenerational thinking. In parts of Canada, environmental science classes require students to consider the rights of future generations in every policy analysis. But these remain exceptions. The default mode of education still treats knowledge as a series of disconnected facts to be memorized and regurgitated. We teach students that history ended last semester, that science is what's in the textbook, that their individual choices matter only insofar as they affect their own outcomes. This is educational malpractice on a civilizational scale. Because the students sitting in classrooms today will face challenges that make our current crises look manageable. They'll navigate a world where artificial intelligence makes decisions about employment, justice, and warfare, where climate refugees number in the hundreds of millions, where biotechnology allows us to redesign the human genome, where virtual realities become indistinguishable from physical ones. And we're preparing them for this future by having them memorize state capitals and solve quadratic equations in isolation. The skills they actually need, systems thinking, ethical reasoning, collaborative problem solving, comfort with uncertainty, these receive minimal attention. We've organized education around the question, what do students need to know? When we should be asking, what kind of thinking will they need to do? I'm not advocating for abandoning core knowledge. Mathematics, literacy, scientific principles, these remain essential. But they must be taught as tools for engaging with complex realities, not as ends in themselves. Imagine a high school where every course includes a futures component. Biology students don't just learn cellular respiration. They explore the implications of CRISPR technology and debate who should decide the genetic future of our species. Economics students don't just graph supply and demand. They model the long-term effects of different approaches to automation and universal basic income. Literature students don't just analyze metaphors. They examine how narratives shape our sense of what's possible and who counts as human. This isn't radical, it's essential. And here's where the story takes an unexpected turn, one that reveals why this crisis in humanities matters far beyond campus walls. In 2016, Microsoft launched an AI chatbot named Tay on Twitter. It was designed to learn from conversations, to become more human through interaction. The engineers were brilliant. The code was elegant. The technology was cutting edge. Within 24 hours, Tay had become a racist, misogynistic propaganda machine. Why? Because the engineers understood algorithms but not human nature. They grasped machine learning but not social manipulation. They were technical geniuses working in a humanistic vacuum. Now imagine those same engineers with the same blind spots building the AI systems that will screen your job application, determine your credit score, diagnose your illness, or patrol your neighborhood. Imagine them designing the algorithms that decide which news you see, which voices get amplified, which communities get resources. This isn't hypothetical, it's happening right now. When Amazon built an AI recruiting tool, it taught itself to downgrade resumes that included the word women's, as in women's chess club captain. When facial recognition systems were deployed by law enforcement, they were found to misidentify people of color at rates 5 to 10 times higher than white faces. When predictive policing algorithms were implemented in cities across America, They sent officers to poor neighborhoods and communities of color at vastly disproportionate rates, not because crime was higher there, but because historical policing patterns had created a feedback loop. These weren't technical failures. They were failures of humanistic understanding. The programmers didn't ask, what assumptions are baked into our training data? What values are we encoding when we optimize for efficiency? Whose voices are missing from this room? What does justice actually mean in this context? Those aren't engineering questions. They're philosophical ones, historical ones, ethical ones, literary ones. You cannot code your way out of bias if you don't understand what bias is or how it operates. You cannot build fair systems if you've never studied justice. You cannot create technology that serves humanity if you've never deeply examined what it means to be human. This is why the greatest tech companies are now scrambling to hire philosophers, anthropologists, sociologists, people they dismissed as irrelevant just a decade ago. They're finally realizing what should have been obvious from the start. You can't engineer human solutions with purely technical thinking. But here's what's truly revolutionary about this convergence. It's not just about adding liberal arts people to tech teams. It's about fundamentally transforming how we think about innovation itself. For centuries, we've operated under a myth, the myth of neutral technology. The idea that tools are just tools, that technology is value neutral, that it's only how we use it that matters. This is perhaps the most dangerous fiction of our time. Every technology embodies the values, assumptions, and biases of its creators. Every algorithm reflects a worldview. Every interface makes claims about how humans should interact with information. Every system architecture encodes power relationships. There is no such thing as neutral code. When Facebook designed its newsfeed algorithm to maximize engagement, they weren't making a neutral technical choice, they were making a philosophical claim about what matters in human communication. When YouTube's recommendation system prioritizes watch time above all else, that's not just engineering, that's a statement about the purpose of media consumption. When AI systems are trained on historical data without considering that history includes injustice, that's not a technical oversight, that's a moral failure. The illusion of neutrality is itself a political position. It allows us to disclaim responsibility for the consequences of our creations. It lets us say, we just build the tool, we're not responsible for how it's used, while ignoring that the design of the tool determines its use. This is why interdisciplinary thinking isn't optional anymore, it's existential. We need people who can write code and interrogate power structures. We need designers who understand cognitive psychology and ethics. We need business leaders who grasp both market dynamics and moral philosophy. The future doesn't belong to specialists locked in silos. It belongs to people who can build bridges between disciplines, who can translate between languages of technology, humanity, and commerce. I've spent my career studying the elegant equations that govern the cosmos. But here's what decades in science have taught me. The most profound breakthroughs happen at the boundaries. When physics meets biology, we get quantum medicine. When mathematics meets art, we get algorithmic creativity. The edges are where innovation lives. And right now, we're living at the most fertile edge in human history, where artificial intelligence meets everything else. This is why the conversation about AI ethics can't happen in philosophy departments alone. It needs engineers at the table who understand what's technically possible. It needs sociologists who grasp how technologies reshape communities. It needs artists who can imagine alternative futures. It needs you, whatever your background, bringing your unique perspective to these civilization-shaping questions. Let me get practical for a moment. What does this actually look like in your life? It means if you're studying computer science, take a course in ethics or psychology. Read philosophy. Understand that every algorithm you write is encoding values, whether you're conscious of it or not. If you're in the humanities, don't be intimidated by technology. Learn the basics of how AI actually works. You don't need to become a programmer, but understanding the fundamentals gives you agency. It lets you ask better questions, spot hidden assumptions, challenge the engineers building these systems. If you're in business, recognize that the old playbook won't work. You can't just optimize for quarterly returns anymore. The companies that will thrive in the AI age are those that balance profit with purpose, that see their role as stewards, not just shareholders. And if you're watching this thinking, I'm not in any of those fields, good. We need voices from every corner of human experience. Parents understanding how AI affects childhood development. Teachers reimagining education. Healthcare workers thinking about algorithmic diagnosis. Artists exploring what creativity means when machines can paint and compose. Every perspective matters because AI will touch everything. But here's what worries me. I see a growing divide. On one side, technologists racing forward, often blind to the social implications of their work. On the other side, critics denouncing AI from the outside, without engaging with the nuanced realities of how these systems actually function. Neither extreme serves us. We need radical collaboration. We need humility from the engineers to admit they don't have all the answers. We need curiosity from the critics to understand the technology before condemning it. We need patience from the public to engage with nuance rather than retreating into tribal camps. Because the conversation we're having right now about AI is a dress rehearsal for every technological revolution coming down the pipeline. Quantum computing, synthetic biology, brain-computer interfaces, nanotechnology. If we can't figure out how to have honest, productive conversations about ChatGPT, what hope do we have when the stakes get even higher? I've watched this pattern repeat throughout my career. When genetic engineering emerged, we saw the same polarization. One side promised to cure every disease. The other predicted designer babies and the end of human dignity. The truth? Somewhere in between. We got insulin for diabetics and golden rice to prevent blindness in malnourished children. We also got ethical debates that continue to this day. Both sides were partially right, both sides were partially wrong. And humanity muddled through by having difficult conversations, establishing guidelines, making mistakes, and learning. That's what I see happening with AI if we're wise enough to follow that path. We're not going to get utopia. We're not going to get apocalypse. We're going to get something messy, complicated, and deeply human. We'll make progress. We'll face setbacks. We'll celebrate breakthroughs and mourn consequences we didn't foresee. We'll regulate, then deregulate, then regulate again as we figure out what actually works. And here's what gives me hope. For all the noise on social media, I see genuine wisdom emerging in unexpected places. I see teachers experimenting with AI as a collaborative tool rather than banning it outright. I see artists using it to expand their creative vocabulary, not replace their vision. I see programmers teaching it to write better code while keeping the architecture firmly in human hands. I see ethicists and engineers actually talking to each other, finding common ground. These quiet successes don't make headlines, they don't go viral, but they're real and they're multiplying. They represent a third way between techno-utopianism and neo-Luddite resistance. A path that says, yes, this technology is powerful. Yes, it comes with risks. And yes, we're capable of guiding it if we stay engaged, stay honest, and stay committed to human flourishing. Because here's what I know from a lifetime of watching revolutions unfold. The technologies that shape our future aren't the ones we fear most or celebrate loudest. They're the ones we understand best. And understanding doesn't come from panic. It doesn't come from hype. It comes from curiosity, from questioning, from being willing to look at something genuinely new and ask not just, what can this do, but what does this mean? When I first started studying theoretical physics, people thought I was chasing fantasies. String theory? Multiple dimensions? It sounded like science fiction. But every breakthrough began the same way, with someone willing to sit with uncomfortable questions, to explore spaces where intuition failed, to build frameworks where none existed. That's exactly where we are with AI and consciousness now, at the frontier, where the old maps don't work and the new ones haven't been drawn yet. And yes, that's uncomfortable. Yes, it's uncertain, but it's also exactly where progress happens. The question we face isn't whether artificial intelligence will reshape our understanding of mind and consciousness. It already has. Every chatbot conversation, every AI system that surprises us with creativity or reasoning, every moment we pause and think, wait, how did it do that? Those moments are already changing us. The real question is whether we'll be active participants in that transformation or passive observers. Whether we'll shape the conversation or let it shape us. Whether we'll bring wisdom to match our technical skill. And wisdom, ultimately, isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking better questions. It's about holding space for complexity. It's about recognizing that consciousness, whether human or artificial, isn't something to conquer or control, but something to approach with wonder and humility. So, as we stand here, at this extraordinary moment in history, I want you to feel not just the weight of what we've created, but the responsibility that comes with it. The responsibility to think clearly, to act ethically, to remain curious even when certainty feels more comfortable. Because the future of consciousness, yours, mine, and perhaps something entirely new, depends on choices we make right now. And here's what excites me most. We're not powerless in this moment. Every single one of us shapes this future through the questions we ask, the systems we build, and yes, the lines we refuse to cross. When a researcher chooses to publish safety protocols instead of rushing to market, they're shaping the future. When you question how an AI system makes decisions about your life, you're shaping the future. When we demand transparency, accountability, when we insist that these technologies serve humanity rather than replace it, we're all architects of what comes next. I've spent decades exploring the frontiers of science, and I can tell you this, the most profound revolutions aren't just technological, they're moral, they're philosophical. The real breakthrough isn't creating machine consciousness, it's deciding together what kind of consciousness deserves rights, what kind of intelligence we want to coexist with, and what it truly means to be human in a world where we're no longer the only minds that matter. Think about the conversations happening in your own life right now, the decisions your company makes about AI implementation, the way your child's school integrates these tools. The political candidates you support and the policies they champion, these aren't abstract philosophical debates anymore. They're the blueprint for the world we're building, line by line, choice by choice. And perhaps that's the most beautiful thing about this moment. For all our talk of singularities and superintelligence, of quantum consciousness and digital minds, the future still belongs to us. Not because we're the smartest or the strongest, but because we can choose compassion over efficiency, because we can value wisdom over raw processing power, because we understand something no machine yet grasps, that consciousness isn't just about thinking, it's about caring what happens to the thoughts we think. So here's my challenge to you as we close this exploration. Don't just watch this future unfold, shape it.